throw it. You got it on a drive. Throw it in the box. We have the TV there. I think where people install the Edith Joe's. So which one you want open?
If we can wait, yeah, the new drawing is at the top. So
Okay, well, we can come back to that one.
the rest of them I had given to the planning department on a stick drive several weeks ago.
Okay. So really what we're focused on right now is just the seeker for Thursday night. I think what we want to kind of go through there, we've identified.
Excuse me, Nate, are there people in the room with you?
Yeah. John, right? John's here.
Just John?
Yeah, and then there are people online.
Okay. I don't see who's online.
If you click the participants list in your Zoom,
Yeah, there's 15 altogether here.
you good, Jamie?
Yeah, but the issue is that like some of them just say like Huber Brewer. They don't have
Got
names
it.
next to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm guessing that's Andy Brewer, Charlie Brewer.
So this is Charlie, yeah.
Okay, got it.
There's I think two from TTM, Jim Monarchio and Craig Leverly.
Oh, but Heather's the only one who was brave enough to show her face this morning. Got it. Okay.
I can do that. It's fine.
It's okay.
All right. So with the seeker, the three issues that kind of have been identified that we want you guys to talk to on this one. We'll talk about the air emissions in there, wetland issues, and then the Indiana back issue. So those are the three issues that we have to address as part of the seeker. In addition, traffic, make sure that you comment on traffic, any mitigation that's gonna happen there. But I think those were the main issues. So if you want to kind of talk through those points.
So one that is, I guess first in my list is that Jim Stokes.
Not to interrupt you, but it's a terrible mic and it's up there, so you gotta make sure that it projects so that everybody on. Sorry.
So we, at the request of Jim Stokes, who's the municipal utility building that's on Hammersmith Drive, the public hearing was held open. I did meet with Mr. Stokes last Wednesday at the municipal utility building. I did go through, I brought drawings, I brought the traffic study. I actually left him with a set of drawings and the traffic study, explained through the project with him. I don't know if he has, but he committed to write a letter to the town planning board and just, I guess, take no exception with the project. He did make a request to me to add some landscaping either on his side of Hammersmith Drive or on the other side, so that it would provided some level of screening from the annex portion loading dock areas of the building. Nothing elaborate, he said, no huge trees. He just requested that we put some landscaping in, which we did. So, so I suspect that I've not heard differently since then. It was an hour-long meeting. It was very cordial, and I don't think he has any objections. And it was more informational, and he was thankful that we did it. So,
Do you know if has anything been received by the town?
I would have to check the file. I don't know if we have any recent submissions.
Well, not a submission, a letter.
Right, I meant just any.
I see that.
I can touch base with him.
Yeah, I mean, knowing that we're gonna be on for Thursday, if you would, just it'd be good to kind of be able to close that loop.
And I guess the other one is that we did receive the engineering and architectural comments. We did formalize our response and we have modified the drawings. I got 3 of them kicked back when I tried to send them for file size, but Mark Parrish has that full set of responses to the comment letter. I'll put it in some sort of share file, somebody in my office will, and we'll send it back. So
Right.
I believe Doug's came back, Jamie's came back, and yours came back. So,
Yeah, I got it, so the office has it.
so that leads to the seeker comment. So we did in our seeker filing identify that air emissions would be permits at that time would be needed for the facility, not knowing exactly what level of permit or what the compounds were or what the emissions values were. But we always had acknowledged that TTM has facilities across the country that require similar permits. In the past couple weeks, Jim Menarchio has, with their consultant, Fuss and O'Neill, put together an extensive list of the compounds that would be used in the processes that are proposed for this facility, together with the emissions values. And we've had, I guess it's now 3 formal meetings with the DEC, the latest of which was yesterday. We had met last Thursday. Dareth Glantz, who's the regional director for Region 7, has been in all those meetings. The most recent meeting yesterday was pretty much specifically related to the air emissions and review of the data that has been assembled for this facility. We had 5 DEC folks on, Mike Wheeler, who was the primary contact and is an air emissions engineer in the DEC, Dareth Glantz, the regional director, Trendon Cho, Tom Bignall, and John Sturchill. Those are more permitting people. So we did disclose this spreadsheet of values in what the conclusions are. They're willing to speak with the board. Mike Wheeler, and I can give you his phone number, is that this wouldn't fall into a category that would require anything more than registration. Values that they were given, you know, I think the comment was, this is all you have, and not measured in tons, they're measured in pounds, and that it would be essentially, more or less, they use the word ministerial to get a registration. Now, I have no idea how many registrations of this type are in the town, but it is the lowest level of, that's not even a permit, it's going to be required by the DEC. They would welcome the call to discuss the compounds. I think there are 3. Jim Menarchio from TTM can give you more detail on that, but no, I won't have the registration done. We acknowledge we need it. We put it in the seeker form. These things are not, whether or not they can get the permit or registration, it's just going through the process. I would.
That's something that will have to be done regardless. Facility is built, you need to register,
Yes,
right? So, and it's acknowledged in the secret form, those conversations have been had.
yeah, and you're welcome to talk to the DEC. They're on board. Darren would, I'm sure, be willing to talk. Mike is more technical in this regard, so. Yes.
Can you put a small summary write-up conversation with DEC, because I can add part of this file,
Absolutely.
you know, that you guys have done your due diligence and had those conversations. It sounds like that registration wouldn't even happen from the building. It's either under construction or operation.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, there's, he said ministerial, but anything is gonna take some
Right.
time. So but it's not a matter of whether or not they can get it. It's just we need to go through the process.
Yeah, so,
And it just, so you're aware and everyone's aware, the DEC's been very cooperative with us, knowing the importance of this project to the upstate tech corridor and honestly to the defense industry and businesses
mhm.
in upstate New York. So they've been responsive for us to have gotten a Tuesday, I think Thursday at 4:30, we met with them virtually and had a meeting yesterday afternoon to follow up on what they suggested we do to move the process along. So that's well underway. So,
Okay, yeah, just capturing that. So that this board has it, be helpful.
So, so to understand, we're going to get a letter from the applicant outlining the conversations with DEC, but we're not going to be talking or hearing from anyone from there directly.
You can, it's a matter of whether you want to reach out to them. I have Mike Wheeler's phone number he's offered. I'm sure Dareth would do the same thing,
If you could send me his number, that'd be
Yeah.
great. I can reach out.
Thank you.
but no.
Sure.
426-7470, it's 315.
Thank you.
So when we see that summary after Alana tells us what has happened there, then Mark, we'll put this in a seeker resolution, provided we resolve the next main issue and that we move forward. But it sounds like we can have the appropriate wording. Does everyone feel comfortable with that? That it's resolved this emissions issue?
I would think so. I mean, with
Yes.
that follow-up and Alana's conversation with them, I think that resolves the issues.
Thank you. So, John, if you can get that to us today, because if we're going to be working on a seeker resolution, we'll have to have that ready
I
to
can
go.
do that.
Thank you.
Question, will this board be, I guess, be informed about how DEC ultimately, approves that permit and if there are conditions to it? In other words, if there are monitoring or reporting requirements after occupancy?
I'd be glad to keep the board informed. I know we say permit, I guess as a registration, it's not even a permit, but I'm happy to keep everybody informed of where we are in the process and what there might be for ongoing monitoring. So I don't know, Jim Monarchio, do you know what the requirements are for ongoing monitoring? Or maybe?
I don't know the specifics yet, but the whatever it is, we can share that with the town as well. I mean, whatever we wind up doing for registration and monitoring winds up being part of public record as well. But we could definitely do that.
Thank you.
The wetlands.
Sure. So back in August of 2023, I think August 7th of 2023, we submitted a delineation report to both the DEC and the Army Corps of Engineers. At that time, the site had no, and it still doesn't have any mapped resource from the DEC's website on this project site. So we sent that in, it was acknowledged the same day. Honestly, we were never really sure whether TTM was going to come to New York or to South Carolina. So awaiting that process, the request for jurisdictional determinations kind of sat. Once we were awarded, I did follow up with I followed up with someone at the Corps that we've dealt with before to basically say we've heard nothing. We haven't had any project managers assigned from the Corps. she called the DEC, and that day we did get, I think it was November 10th or the second week in November, we had both from the Army Corps and from the DEC assigned project managers. At that time, our opinion and our wetland delineation firm, professional firm out of Buffalo, Earth Dimensions, basically counseled us that since we were far outside any mapped resource on the DEC's mapper or the 500-foot check zone, that it was likely that there would be no further response from the DEC other than to determine it non-jurisdictional. That turned out not to be the case. So I was able to, in January, since we've had a favorable mild winter, get the DEC and the Corps to go out to the site to take a look. So right now, where we are is that we have delineated wetlands on the site. They are essentially, and there's a drawing included in this package, completely overlaid on the drainage facilities that were approved in the town for the DeWitt Landing project back in the late 80s. They track it almost exactly with, I think, one major or one minor boundary outside of the drainage easements that are recorded via the subdivision maps that were required by the town of DeWitt. So we have drainage areas set up to take water, that took water, that grew wetland vegetation and was identified and delineated. And there's an overlay map that shows the easement areas and the delineation areas from our Earth Dimensions report. So we got into a kind of trap because the DEC wants to go out and look at the site during growing season, and which is generally May. So we've been in a position where they have requested this on-site verification, both the DEC and the Corps, and we have it set up right now for April 26th at 10 a.m. to go out and relook at the site. It's been a mowed upland field for its entire history. We've gone back through Google Maps. The site has kind of always looked like it looks today, but we're stuck in purgatory without having this on-site visit to either tell us there's more or less wetlands on site. So we have a situation where, again, we're kind of in a holding pattern, but what the DEC has said to us in the past week is that they will take no jurisdiction inside the loop of Hammersmith Drive, which is where all the building construction and parking lots are planned for the TTM project. So you look at that west to east, little 20-foot wide loop strip of wetland delineation that continues through the inside part of the loop of Hammersmith. So
Is that for that as well?
Nate, I can't hear you.
I was just asking about the comment on the extension to the east, that little blue spur. If that follows that drainage swale that we were talking about abandoning. The answer is yes, currently.
yeah, we don't really know. The issue there, they have no maps. So the issue there is connection to waters and woods. So that's still an open issue. So, so what this map is intended to show, with the comment from the DEC, which you can verify that they wouldn't take jurisdiction inside the loop of Hammersmith Drive. What we have on the west side, outside of the loop on Hammersmith Drive, is stormwater facilities.
How, if it is found to be jurisdictional, how would that affect your stormwater?
Well, so that's what this plan is intended to show. Our stormwater, because the easements existed at 130 feet of the western boundary. Engineering wise, we put them in that drainage easement because it existed in its intended use. We don't have to put them in there. So on this drawing, what is it been submitted to the town of DeWitt is in the black lines, shows the contours of our retention ponds. The red lines are, well, on the outside of the loop. They're,
Oh, in here.
yeah, so those are what's shown on the current set of plans that are under review by Mark Parrish. The red area is to show essentially that we can engineer around any impact to the wetlands. And I say any, that small east to west bridge, I have to impact that. And that's about 4,000 square feet, which is less than a tenth of an acre. Would fall outside of any permitting. So this map is to show that we can engineer, have stormwater facilities with the same capacity, have a more organic shape, which we were gonna do anyways, and you'll see in the comment letter response that we've done. We can engineer around, provide the same stormwater facilities, but stay out of the delineated wetlands as they exist today. We don't have to touch the northern boundary of the property. Is another 30-foot or 20-foot drainage area that's delineated as wetland. But we have enough land where we're able to accommodate, minimize what we can minimize, we can mitigate. And, you know, it's a process that we have to go through, but there's a way to engineer around it to not impact or minimize the impact to the extent it would be a nationwide permit.
Okay,
It's, you know, from our perspective, it's kind of an unfortunate thing because they are man-made, low-quality drainage ditches, but you know, it's just been a struggle that they were intended to do this, they did it, and they grew some wetland vegetation and
yeah. Mark, do you have these drawings?
Yes, yeah. No, I'm sorry, I don't have this one, but I have the rest of the ones that he was referring to.
Is this the one that came last night?
yeah, this, well. I don't-
Or if I do have it, I haven't looked at it yet. I apologize. So,
I don't think this was in the package that went
Yeah.
last night. It was only the original drawings, so
Can you send us this one?
absolutely.
Yeah, so we'll get you this drawing, Mark, for you to take a look at.
well, I mean, I'm, looking at it, it appears reasonable to me. I mean, it's what I would expect if they were to try to move the stormwater management facility outside the wetland boundaries. And again, it shows a minimal impact on less than 4,000 square feet or a tenth of an acre. And so that's below the permitting thresholds. It might be a nationwide permit, but regardless.
Right,
Yeah, I know I think in some ways said we can engineer out, this is just intended to show that we can. You know, there's still available land outside the horseshoe. I won't tell you that we might not reconfigure it a little bit to make what's left more usable, but I think the long and the short is that we can provide the same stormwater facilities without impacting or minimally impacting the wetlands that are delineated.
And they're not talking about.
So
Outside other than where the drainage easement is.
Don't know that, that's my comment about being in purgatory with them. It may, you know, they will admit, Maggie Crawford, who I met with Maggie and Tiffany Calais. You know, could be more, could be less. They might not take jurisdiction. That's been the problem, and we had our And there's been some apologies on the DEC's parts for not acting more quickly and being able to look at it during last year's growing season, but we are where we are.
So if they take jurisdiction, how's that gonna impact your layout here?
Well, we would, I mean, if they take jurisdiction, we don't impact it, or we design around any impacts, or, I mean, with the core, it's different. You can write a check essentially to provide mitigation through Ducks Unlimited, and Ducks Unlimited has credits. It's just a matter of being willing to spend the money, which I don't mean to speak for TTM, you know, one of the two entities will, you know, you can provide mitigation by writing a check and buying credits, so.
Okay. So we still really aren't doing anything because we're waiting on DEC. I mean, how do we close that loop on seeker
I'd like to
without?
talk to DEC about this. I'm not
Well,
sure.
do I,
Before we have a determination.
Right, that's what I'm kind of.
Alana, can you speak up a little? Sorry.
I was saying
Right.
I'd like to talk to DEC about this. I'm unclear if we should be acting on seeker before we even have a determination by the state and Army Corps.
So we're still waiting for Army Corps as well?
Yeah,
Yeah, that, it should all come through. Does it all come through DEC? Or they do separate?
I mean, anything jurisdictional for the core, it needs a water quality cert from DEC, which is a pretty standard form that is a 404, I think it is, water quality cert, so. I mean.
Is there a worse case? And I've been listening, but is there a worse case scenario here? Or are we at the point where we're guessing of what the potential jurisdictional limits might be, but it could be even more? Because if, or is that so far out that it would be inappropriate for us to entertain that?
You know, our position, and we hired a professional delineation firm that works all over the state to do a delineation during the growing season, which they did last July. And these are the areas they determined. They followed all the guidelines. I think there are 2 guideline books for wetland delineation, and this is what they delineated as being on the site. You know, the site has been historically, and we've looked at aerial photos back into the 70s, it's always been a mowed field, and upland mowed field. If you look at the field reports for the delineation, they say upland field. The areas that took water were designed to take water, and they did. And they grew wetland vegetation. So it's been our position that we properly delineate the site with a certified professional wetland scientist. And this is what they came up with as being wetlands.
But DEC just, they won't tell us. And it might be more, I guess, or is that
Less.
just,
I mean, it could be less.
Right. no, but I don't really care about the less, because if it's less, we can make some kind of determination, but if it's more, and on what scenario could it be more? You know, how can then a seeker determination be made?
Isn't
Like
it similar that it's an engineering issue? It's not if we can satisfy it, they can satisfy it by writing a check in general. Mitigating it, doing some sort of offsite mitigation. It is a solvable issue for the project. It's not like it can't be solved.
And what we're really talking about is that 4,000 square foot spur, right? That's kind of the, the rest. That,
We don't think it will be more. If you go out and look at that site, it's been mowed forever since Martin Act developed it back in the late 80s. It is a green field amongst pretty fully developed area.
okay, so Jamie, what do we need? I just don't like having the unknown secret that we're trying to do Thursday night.
You see about this one too, when permitting.
Well, that's what I'm trying to ascertain, right?
Right.
Um,
Alana's gonna call the DEC. So what was your contact for this one? You said you were assigned a project manager. Is it Trenton?
Well, Trending is the DEC permitting guy. Nate Carlton is the actual line level field guy. My personal opinion is Dareth has the highest level full picture of this situation. And I think she would be the best person to, and she would know who in permitting to talk to, so.
Mark, I'm gonna rely on you and just kind of give us the 2-second recommendation on it.
Well, I mean, in seeker, you're supposed to, look at the potential impacts and see if they can be mitigated. They've gone and delineated the wetlands, with a consultant. Unfortunately, haven't received a confirmation of that from the jurisdictional authorities. I would find it highly unlikely that more wetlands will be considered jurisdictional than what is currently shown. And they've provided a plan here that shows how they can avoid the impacts, which is the first step that you want to do as opposed to mitigating. So, I think if we had a jurisdictional determination, I think I'd be comfortable in saying, that they've shown that they can mitigate or avoid the impacts to the extent practical, and you could make a determination. The only issue is the lack of that jurisdictional determination, but I can't see it expanding for all the reasons John has said, because this is clearly an upland site with the exception of these drainage ditches, essentially. I mean, that's what we're talking about, is constructed drainage ditches that have been there for 35 years and have now taken on wetland characteristics.
So,
One quick comment to that. The basis of jurisdiction for the Corps is connection to waters of the US. Puddles of wetland that don't connect to the waters of the US, from my experience, they determined to be non-jurisdictional. All this drainage ditch thing is all the connection. And, the likelihood of drainage ditches, which are dug and deep, being expanded, in our minds, is unlikely. I don't know if that makes sense, but the rest, if there's a puddle someplace from grading, it doesn't connect to the waters of the US. So what's shown
So-
here is the direct connection. That
so,
was intended connection.
yeah, excuse me, John. So if Alana talks to the DEC, we'll get more information. Mark and I will put together a proposed, let's say, a comment that would be included in the seeker, one that would be moving toward a neg deck, and an alternative as to why that should not, you know, be a neg deck on just this one issue, right? Circulate it to the board and try to get a consensus of what everyone is comfortable with. Does that make sense?
And I'll email the board after I talk to DEC.
So
Jamie,
I have
can
a
you just
que-
repeat that again real quick? Sorry.
I think that it can go one of two ways. Either it looks like everything else appears to be resolved on seeker except this. But internally that we'll look at, you know, reasons why this should be neg decked and reasons why it should not be neg decked, and try to come up with a consensus internally on that. Because we don't want to be on Thursday night being, you know, well, like we have to have a general idea of it. Nothing that happens though in the background is ever a vote. It's just information for the board. So Mark Parrish and I will work on that after Alana talks to the DEC and considering all of the information that's been shared this morning and previously.
So Jamie, considering that the seeker process asks us to consider the mitigation strategies they've been considered. If there was more area that was considered jurisdictional and the applicant can show that they've got a mitigation strategy in place for those, would that be an option? In other words, we've kind of looked at the best and worst case scenarios for mitigation as part of this process.
Well, I think that the issue, and this is something that, you know, Mark and I will look at, and by Mark and I mean mainly Mark, because he's got the engineering brain, but you know, like they've have the experts, they've got this certain amount of wetland. For this board needs to be careful, but they don't need to be ridiculous. Like, oh, the whole site could be wetlands. How could it be mitigated? You know, that's one extreme. Or the other extreme is, worst case, it could be a little bit more. How much could it be? Or this is so accurate and the mitigation is so feasible that, you know, we would be okay. So that's sort of the way that I look at it. Does everyone follow that? It needs to be reasonable. It doesn't need to be ridiculous, and it needs to be appropriate, and it needs to follow. There's a whole book on seeker, and for each item, what needs to be looked at, and we'll look at that carefully. I don't have an answer. I mean, I don't have a preconceived idea at this moment in time. We're going to get a little more information from the DEC, and, you know, particularly Mark and I will need to study it to give the proper recommendation. But I think you heard him.
Right. Set on that? And you'll talk to DEC?
Yeah.
Great. I think the last issue that we were just gonna talk about was the bat issue, but it sounds like at this point, you'll have to go through the same DEC issue with the bats and clearing and.
Yeah, so we did do a study. It identified 12 trees that are primarily along Fly Road and essentially around the residential lots that exist in the northeast corner. Those were identified as potential roost for the bats. Obviously, we would, you know, some of them are in the footprint of the building and be in the way. We would like to remove all of them. You know, I think I shared the bat report. I didn't, I apologize and will. Question is not. Obviously, we would like to take them down before the 31st of March deadline. There are other ways to identify whether there's true roost in these trees in the future, but right now, at least the ones that are in the building pad or disrupt the foundations, we would like to take down, and I think there are 6. Now, I learned more about bats than I ever cared to know, but you know, our consultant, you know, these trees are relatively stranded, so we're not clearing trees, we're not clearing a forest, these are isolated trees around residential properties. I guess bats don't like to fly over open areas because of predators. So they'll, you know, on top of his report, the likelihood that he tells me is they don't like isolated trees like the 12 that are on our property, and they prefer to be closer to forested areas. And that's what I know, but for all I know, they're in there. Obviously, we would like to be able to cut the trees before the 31st. So, but I know the board has some considerations.
Yeah. I think that's all that part of the site plan process.
Again, Nate, I can't hear you.
That that'll all probably have to be part of the site plan review process. I'm not sure that we'll actually get to that position to allow clearing in the next 5 days. So we'll just have to consider that part of the process. But any information on the bats and DEC should be included as part of the seeker for determination in there.
So I'll send the report to Juan.
Yeah, I think we have.
Okay. Okay. So the wetland issue is the big one. Air emissions seems like it's easily addressed. And the bat issue seems to be easily addressed, which will just end up being part of the site plan review. We'll also close the public hearing at this meeting. We'll ask if anybody else has any additional comment, and then we'll close the public hearing before we start in on the rest.
And I'll follow up with Jim Stokes if you don't have that letter.
Yep, that'd be good. Jamie, is there anything else?
I don't think so.
Any other questions from the board?
No, I think I'm good.
Any comments from the project team? Anything else? And you did say you resubmitted updated elevations and site plan and all that stuff for us to
Yes,
look through.
it got kicked back from 3, but
But if at least it got into her, it gets into the system, we can see it from there.
and
Okay.
I think Mark was able to get the file also.
If you could, yes, I've got it, and we can
Okay.
send out things individually if we have to. And if you could send me the bat thing again, just in case
Okay.
we don't have trouble finding it right now.
Mark, do you have the bath comments?
I've got the bat study. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Good.
Do you need me to do anything with that, Jamie, or just?
Well, I just think we need to include it in our
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've looked it over and I'm just double checking here. I do have it, yes. So we can reference the date or who prepared it, et cetera, if that's what you're asking.
Great.
So in terms of process forward, we hope to address seeker this week. We have updated materials here. You're on a track B, which would mean you are second meeting in March. In there. I mean, thank you, April. I'm losing a month. So I think we gotta go through this final package, provide you with any kind of final comment in there.
I thought we were a track A project.
I have on here track B.
'Cause I was sent the track A.
But I have in my notes.
I was
track
going to
A.
say, I think your original site plan is on one track and then your tree clearing site plan is put on another. Based
so
on your
that's the difference
submission
in
dates, and that's the
Okay.
difference.
So you would be a track A, because I think the site plan you
I'm
were.
not, yeah, I can't recall off the top of my head which one was on which track, but they definitely were both on separate tracks. So new submission dates.
All right, so first, let's. From what I had in here. In my notes was track A, but in our agenda was track B, and I think that's what you're referring to as the tree clearing. What was on the track B, so if it is track A, we've got to review the materials that you got to us and provide any final comments. On that one.
Yeah, obviously. Sooners. You know.
Yep, 100%, we're trying to work through this and help you through this. So if we can do the review, get you any comments, that first meeting. In April is the 11th. You know, ideally, final materials would be in by the 28th, which is 2 days from now, so I don't think we're gonna get comments back to you. In there. So we'll just have to do it as quick a review as we can on that one. Jamie, are there any other issues that we need to address prior to the 11th?
It's seeker.
Well, Seeker's this Thursday, right? So.
Right. Yes, yes,
that,
if we could
once
get through it.
address Seeker. You know, and I'll work through with the board if there are any other outstanding issues.
Yeah,
But-
trying to be as detailed in our responses as we could to,
Yep.
Make
Yep.
sure the review.
Yeah, and I think at this point, if there are any comments, I mean, we've given you a pretty thorough preliminary round of comments. If you've addressed them and they're all reflected in the current set of drawings, if there's any last minute things that we need to address, hopefully those are minimal at this point. So we'll push towards doing a review on the 11th at this point. Unless there are other issues that this board or other entities have, which would delay us, that I think we can shoot for.
Thank you.
Okay? Anything else from board? Other than that, I think we're done with Aaron. We'll let him go. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
So we're gonna go back into executive session at this point.
Good night. Thank
You
you.
too.
Thank you.
Up at the top.